Hey, what's up, Laura? So thank you so much for listening to that podcast. And you're absolutely right. There is a ton of information in that one podcast. And if you subscribe to that podcast, in that is so many episodes of just great stuff movement-wise, great stuff DR-wise. She talks about it in a few different episodes as well. But I thought this one just gave you kind of a little bit of context and kind of the beginning of her philosophy and how she comes about, managing, mitigating, and dealing and healing DR, right? Like, I think that's a important place to be, and it may be different than maybe other ways that you've done in the past. So, but I wanted to make a video here just to give you a couple things to think about before. So, as she mentioned, there's no like 5 exercises that she gives to people. The book talks about those forces, talks about the different ways that the linea alba is imposed upon, even before pregnancy. Right? Pregnancy is just kind of the last straw, right? That really exposes that area of wear or weakness or whatever it may be. And so what you'll see, like, they talk about the forces and kind of the history of it, but then at the end, they show you a whole list of basically stretches that you're doing. And what I think about is you're pulling slack from everywhere, right? Like, one of the first stretches that you do is you're on the floor once you're set in the position, and you're doing this kind of snow angel on the floor. Now, as I go up, I'm stretching all through here, and all that connects to that linea alba that runs right down the middle, where the separation occurs, right? Or the deformity occurs, right? So it's almost like you're doing all these stretches and some movements that are just trying to relieve tension throughout the entire body, therefore not creating any pull through here, right? So just a couple concepts to think about, like, oh, what did it mean when she was talking about this, that, or how I stand. So if you look at how I just stood right now, right? Like, both toes are pointed outward, right? I definitely like to be on my right side a little bit more sometimes, or my left, depending on what I'm doing. But all of these create different tensions that start to pull here. So what she's trying to get you to do is to kind of zero or create neutral throughout your entire body, right? Toes pointed forward, pelvis underneath the rib cage underneath the head, all in one alignment. Very little strain being done through that midsection. And so there's a position that she has you take on. But the one thing I wanted you to notice is, next time you get a chance, maybe snap a picture or ask Adam to, tell you what's happening with your body, but just stand how you normally would stand. And a real good way is to kind of, move around a little bit and then just stand like you would. Okay? And see what you notice. Do you lean on the left foot more than the right, or vice versa? Do you shift? Do you do a little hip kick out? Do your toes do anything? Another big one is from the side, do you stick your tail out? Right? Most of us do. I have a habit of doing that where my pelvis is rocked forward, so I have a low back arch. My ribs are sticking out a little bit. Right? That's a very military type position. But it's really putting strain through that midsection, right? So I would try to see what you notice. Do you have these little ways that you stand? Then, a few things to think about is those 2 bony landmarks right on the front of your hips. Most people, when they grab their hips, there are 2 bony landmarks right in the front, right? You'll be able to feel them pretty easily. Now, those guys you want obviously in the same plane, but the third one is your pubic bone, right? And so pretty low, but it's kind of a protrusion as well. So at that point, along with these, those hip bones, those should all be in the same plane. If we go back to sticking the tail out here, those 2 hip bones are in front of my pubic bone. Right? They're out here. So one of the things to start thinking about is, man, can I get those 3 in the same plane? Right? which would take a little bit of a tail tuck under to kind of flatten out those lower abdominals and to have both protruding top bones and then pubic bone all in the same plane. Okay? So that's kind of the first one. The second thing to think about is toes pointed forward, right? My ankles should be centered right underneath my hip joints. Most of us stand a little bit wider. Some of us from time to time will be a little closer. You usually see that in walking. But you really want to be at that nice hip width position, toes pointed forward, tail slightly tucked. Boom. Okay. Two last things here to think about. So I got those two. Toes are forward. These 3 points are in the same plane. Now, instead of loading my toes, I want you to bring your pelvis back or your hips back so they're in line with your heels. It's almost like your toes can float a little bit. And you'll immediately feel lighter through the legs. There's not so much tension through the quads. Like this right here is pulling those abs as well. So I want to be able to stand back, tail tucked, right? And then the fourth and final one is my ribs. Most of us stand up tall, and the bottom part of our rib cage flares out. So if I have my feet straight, these 3 points in the same plane, I'm back so that I'm sitting in my heels a little bit more to where the center of my hip joint is right over actually that little round ankle bone on the outside. Then the final piece is to bring my ribs down. Now you may look at that and think, oh man, there's a little bit of a rounded back there. And for me, my shoulders are tight, so yes. But this is something I've been working on too, keeping my rib cage down. Then any stretches I do through here are going to start to create change up in my shoulders, not in my low back because my rib cage is moving around. So over the next few days, that's what I want you to pay attention to. Are both feet pointed forward? Those 3 points, both my bony hip in the front and my pubic bone, are those in the same plane of motion? Right? One's not in front or two's not in front. Right? Is my rib cage down? Right? And am I leaning too far forward? I want to drift back, put some weight in those heels, and have those positions. Give that a try. I really want to know how it feels. I think you're coming over tomorrow, and if I'm here, I'll answer any questions you got then too. If you can get that down in the meantime, then I'll start working on those other stretches to give you. But it's that first. You need to get familiar with that because all the stretches require that you hold that before you do the stretch. Right? Otherwise, you're just going to be creating those same pulls and tugs throughout those abs. Anyways, let me know. Okay.